Hey, Clancy, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing, David?
I'm doing very well. Nice to see you. You're about I think about a block or a block and a half away from me right now, right?
I think, yeah, probably if I shouted out of my window here, you could hear it.
Right. Well, it's the modern age here, right? So you're
That's right. I mean, I guess you're probably so used to hearing people shouting, it would be it would almost be like white noise. But yeah,
well, it is South Philly, right? If people aren't shouting, it's ambulances or police
yeah,
or
yeah.
hey, it's we live in a colorful neighborhood, right?
It's true. It's true. Yeah, yeah.
Well, let's launch right into this. So, how did you wind up in Philadelphia, and where are you from originally?
So I grew up in Albany, in upstate New York. And then I went to school in New York, and I was in New York City for quite a long while. Um, and then I met my wife Angel. Uh, she basically hated New York. Like we lived in New York together for a little while, and she was doing like this horrible subway commute, trying to get from the west side to the east side. It's just very difficult.
Impossible on the
Um,
subway. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So it involved all a bus and two subways. It was just so. Um, and meanwhile, she went to school in Philly, and she really liked Philly. I liked Philly because like my big sister lives here, and I'd spent a lot of time in Philadelphia over the years, so it just seemed like it made sense to come to Philadelphia. Yeah.
Well, there's this crazy story, right? How you and I had communicated for I think several years before I actually met you, because I had
Yeah.
known your roommate, had known Raman,
Yeah.
and then right as I recall,
Yeah.
I was in my kitchen and I heard on this back street someone playing the cello. So I like went outside and I listened, and immediately behind my house there was this person playing the cello. It was like, wow, this guy's really good. And I think I might have called up to the window or something.
Yeah, I
Maybe you came
remember
down.
I remember I yeah, maybe you called up to the window because my sister lived like right there. So it's like
Immediately
literally
behind my house. Yeah.
right behind your house. And I remember I feel like it was like during the summer or like the warmer months, and you like called up, and then I don't know if I came down or whether I just talked to you from the window. But you had like at least one of your daughters, if not both, like so they were like really little, like I almost feel like baby or toddlers or something, sort of. Um, and that yeah, that's what I remember, just like talking to you. Yeah.
Right. Well, I remember it was like, hey, who are you? And you were like, you know, my name's Clancy Newman. It's like, wait, you're Clancy. We've emailed, we've spoken on the phone like for
Right.
years. Uh,
Yeah.
crazy, crazy, crazy. So that's a real Philadelphia kind of story there.
It's like, yeah, really, really small town. I mean, it's kind of unbelievable.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're headed off to Australia soon, I believe, right?
Yeah. Less than 2 weeks. Yeah.
And are you there for family or for concerts or both? I imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. Both. Yeah. So, my family is from Australia. So my parents came to America, uh, after they got married. They're both Australian. And actually, the first place they came to was Philadelphia. Um, but they were only here for a little while. My dad got his PhD here, and then they lived in Rome for a little while, and then they ended up somehow in Albany, New York, of all places.
Wait, did you say
Um,
Rome?
yeah, yeah, they lived
So
in
they
Rome
went
for a few.
Philadelphia to Rome, then to Albany?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. My older sister was born in Rome, actually. Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah. So they just they weren't sort of thinking that they were going to like be in Albany for a long time. At the time, I think it was like a 2 year position that my dad had teaching at SUNY Albany. But then my mom, she got her PhD there, and I guess maybe she started. It just sort of became a permanent thing because it was good for both of their academic careers to be there, and plus. You know, they had me, and so then, and my older sister was there. So when we were starting, you know, I think it was just the next thing they knew, you know, how many years is that? Like 30 years or something went by, you know, just like that.
And they
So
been
anyway,
planning to move back to Rome the whole time. Somehow I just Philly to
I
Rome
don't
and then to
I don't
Albany.
know I don't know what they I don't know if they were planning anything. I think it's just they've always been pretty spontaneous.
Oh, okay.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I just drove them to the airport a few hours ago. They just decided like 2 days ago or something, like, oh, they're going to go to Australia. Like, so so they're like on their way there right now.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
Wait, but
but
they live in
yeah, so
Australia now. Oh no, they live here.
yeah, they still live in the house I grew up in Albany, but they have this house in Australia, which is in this beautiful spot. So I've been going there every year except last year, uh, for probably about 15 years at this point. And at first, I would go there just to as an artist's retreat, and I would just compose,
Hmm.
and it was really nice because uh, it's in this small little beach town, and it's on a little dirt road on a river, and you walk like not even 2 minutes along the dirt road, and it just goes to the forest, and then it's just trails like through the bush. It's just like it's so beautiful.
Is this East
So
Coast,
I would
West Coast, or South?
yeah, it's the east. It's the southeast. So it's you fly into Melbourne and then you drive sort of west along the coast from Melbourne, to get there, um, and it's so beautiful there. But then at some point, probably about 10 years ago or so, I got in touch with a pianist from Sydney, who runs these tours. So, um, so I've been so every year I've been going on a 6 concert tour with her, and usually with a violinist. So it's like piano trios, sometimes piano quartets, sometimes other instruments too, like clarinet or something like that.
Hmm.
And we'll do a 6 concert tour of southeastern Australia, so Melbourne, Sydney, Canberra, Adelaide, and a few other small places. Um,
Go
uh,
to
yeah,
Tasmania, or that's a little too far south there.
Tasmania, I guess it just has to do with where she has the contacts, and she doesn't have the contacts with Tasmania, so
Sure.
we haven't played in Tasmania. I've been to Tasmania a couple times, a few times, and yeah, it's like my favorite. It's probably my favorite place in Australia that
Uh-huh.
I've been to anyway.
It
Um,
seems
so
amazing, actually. I mean, all of Australia, it's big, it's huge.
yeah, yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing how big it is and how few people there are. I mean, you don't have to go far, even when you're in a population center, to just sort of get away from it all. Um, and you know, I mean, I've seen some pretty decent wildlife like within sight of the skyline of Sydney.
Hmm.
You know, I've seen yeah kangaroos and goannas, and the skyline will just be you can see the skyscrapers right there in the distance, and yet it's there's enough nature around, um, that you can still see some pretty cool stuff even within the city limits.
And it's all
Um,
trying to kill you, right?
yeah, that's right. I mean, yeah, like I haven't seen that many snakes, but I have seen some, uh, and I've seen some that were very deadly, and some that were apparently that looked really deadly and were harmless. Also, within seeing Sydney, this big, I guess it was like a some sort of a they called it a python of some sort, but I don't know. It looked really scary, and it was all coiled up on the path, and we were walking pretty fast, and we just and it was right there, all coiled up. But my cousin, who I was with, she said that it's not venomous actually. So
Okay.
Anyway, yeah.
How do you said you've seen some steaks that are very deadly. I mean, how do you know?
I guess process of elimination. That being that, like in Tasmania, apparently there are three species of snake, and all three of them are completely deadly. And I've seen snakes in Tasmania, so therefore, I guess there's a good chance that it's deadly. Yeah. So,
And you
um,
mentioned an animal I never heard of, a goyaba. What did you say?
yeah, goanna. Yeah, it's like a big lizard, like
Okay.
bigger than I can show in this screen. And they can climb up trees, and yeah, I've never seen them move like super fast, but I bet they can move fast if they have to. um, uh, and yeah, they're quite common, like around Sydney, anywhere anyway, probably other places too. Yeah.
What do they eat?
It seems like they must actually. I'm not sure. I was going to say leaves because I see them like in trees and stuff, but maybe it's insects. Um,
I mean, Kodu,
I'm
what
not.
is it? Kodu dragons. Uh,
That's
I
right. Yeah. In
remember reading these stories about, someone on a tour lags behind, and then they walk back 10 minutes later and they find, a slightly chewed camera strap and some scuff marks. That's it. So I guess you don't worry about that in Australia. I'm not even sure where that is. Was it Indonesia maybe or something?
Yeah, I was going to say Indonesia. Yeah.
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 So
Yeah. Maybe goannas are like a distant relation of that. I don't know. They seem like they're around picnic areas a lot, so I bet they eat like sort of stuff that picnickers either leave around or feed them when they shouldn't, something like that. I don't know.
or maybe they eat stuffed picnickers, right? So,
Yeah, I guess that's the other.
all
Yeah,
right,
don't let your children get too far out of sight.
we should probably
Uh,
talk about music here a little bit.
oh, yeah.
Uh, so where do we even go here with that? All right, so you talked about artist retreats, and I know you as a cellist, but also very much as a composer, and a fantastic composer.
Oh, thank you.
So how did you get into composition? And is there one? This is kind of a silly question, maybe, but is there a piece? Was there a particular influential piece that you wrote in terms of your career as a composer, or a favorite piece of yours that you've written, or a magnum opus? And what is I've read about the golden ratio method that
Yes.
you've kind of, what do you say, not even pioneered, kind of established. So maybe you could talk a
Invented.
little about that. Invented, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I started playing the cello when I was 6, and when I was 7, I just sort of tried writing a piece of music, and it wasn't anything spectacular or anything. It was just, it was just like something out of Suzuki Book One, just very basic. But I got a certain kind of thrill out of doing that, that really left a big impression on me. I can't explain it even. I just it just was it was like, something that I just really got a lot of joy out of, and from then on, I always was scribbling down melodies, and I used to have like, I would have notebooks with just like tunes to add to,
Hmm.
and I would just scribble them. We would go on long car trips. Actually, especially in Australia, we would go on these long car trips, and I'd be in the back seat with my little sister, and I would just be scribbling away, writing. I mean, none of it was very good. This would have been when I was like 12. Like a violin concerto, and a string quartet, and none of it was very good. But still, it was like something that I really, really loved doing. And so then, as I got older, um, like once I was a freshman in college, then I tried, doing a sort of a multi-tracking thing where I wrote a piece for 8 cellos, and I went to a recording studio, and put the 8 parts together,
Mm.
and it turned out like pretty decent. And and so then it gave me a little bit of confidence, but still not. I don't know how to explain it. It was always a very like private and personal thing for me composing, because I guess I had just it was all in my head. Uh, Other than I would play some solo cello stuff, but a lot of times I would be imagining an accompaniment that I wouldn't, but I would be too kind of scared to try it out with a pianist or anything like that. So the 8 cello piece was sort of the beginning of doing stuff with multiple instruments.
Mm.
Um, but then I had that piece performed sort of based on that recording. I my One of my cello teachers put on a performance of the piece with his studio of cellists, and I was so disappointed. It just wasn't. It didn't have the magic that I somehow had envisioned, um, and it was a real learning experience for me, because uh, for when you're a composer, there's so much love for your creation, and it's really difficult not to sort of assume that other people are going to see all these wonderful things that you see.
Mm.
um, but the way they played it was sort of like up bow down bow up bow down bow. It wasn't no, people didn't have that love for it like it's their child. So um so I realized, one thing I realized was you have to notate stuff. Like I just thought it was obvious that you would do a retard here, or you would do a crescendo here, or I thought all these things were just sort of really obvious. But as I've gotten older, I've started notating in much more detail than when I was younger, because you can't assume that musicians are just going to know these things, or do these things. Um, yeah, so then after that, I was interested in other forms of music too, rock and roll and stuff like that. And that I wrote like a solo cello piece that was sort of a rock and roll kind of a piece. Also, it was right around that time when I was in early years of college, and that was like when I sort of finally realized that like this feels like me somehow. Before that, I was writing stuff that was more sort of like Dvorak-y, I guess, and this and having this sort of the rock and roll element. um, it There was something about it that really felt good. And also, I was sort of getting into Bartok by that point, so and it combining Bartok with rock and roll kind of went together pretty well.
Sure.
Um, so Yeah, and so then after that, so I guess I'm rambling on and on about year by year by year. But as I got older, that I came up with this golden ratio method idea, and that would have been in, I think, 2009, um, and it just completely changed everything. I mean, at the time, I was so excited when I had the idea, um, that I didn't sleep or really eat. I barely ate anything for like 3 days. I would lie in bed and I was just too excited to sleep. And then I would have an idea and I would like get up and do all these. It was a crazy time. I remember it. It was like November 10th or something like that, right around that. And I remember it was like, and I don't really want to explain what that method is, because I feel like explaining it, um, no one, it never does justice to any art. I think to sort of try to explain it to someone, to sort of make them appreciate it. I mean, really, you have to experience it yourself in order to really form, uh, uh, I don't know what the word is, not accurate, but a true kind of a judgment of it. So one thing I did do, I finally thought that maybe it would be a good idea to create something that would sort of document what this method is. So I made a video. Uh, it's like a 22-minute video that basically just outlines how the method works. And that was a long time ago. I'm still excited about it now. Um, uh, I still use that method, not in all my compositions, but I still use it. And Yeah, and so there are a bunch of pieces from that time that I feel like might be what you were saying, like my magnum opus or something like that. Maybe the one I'm most proud of is maybe like the first one I wrote actually, which is a cello duet, um, and it's 11 minutes long, and it's both a palindrome and a canon. So it's the exact same thing forwards and backwards, but it's also a canon. So I play something, and then the other cellist plays the exact same thing as me, and then it hits the midpoint, and then it's in reverse. Uh,
Hmm.
so
Sounds like
yeah,
lyrics
so
suite,
it
right?
has.
That fourth movement of
What's
lyrics
that?
suite.
I think I've heard of that piece before.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
anyway,
it's
that's
interesting. This idea of composers looking for a system, right? And it's this idea of out of chaos, looking for some kind of ordering principle, um, which I suppose, correct me if I'm wrong, but ideally it's it's actually whatever the quote system is, it's not necessarily something that the listener needs to consciously be aware of, right? As
right.
opposed to listening to the music, and then you say, you have a visceral response, and oh, I love this. This is beautiful. And then, like with Bartok, I like this or I don't like this. I listen to it, and then you read up on the piece and you say, oh, there's all this architecture and all these structures and this idea of the big picture or the small picture and synecdoche, and how one measure or one interval, the whole piece works. But as a first time or a third time or a fifth time listener, the average audience member, doesn't need to be aware of any of this. It's just like, oh, I like Bartok, or I like Schoenberg.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what 12 tone means, but now that I know, that informs the music even more. Oh, I see. Clancy's taking this thing, and it's backwards, it's front and backwards. But I right, we can take in music, visually, but we absorb it in time, in fact, right, which is
Yeah.
progressive for the
Yeah.
most part. Right. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think you're totally right about that. You don't need to know anything in order to appreciate what's going on. All the sort of inner workings of. I mean, as you're getting something out of it, and that I think it's important with any of these methods that it's based on the human experience,
Mm.
and it's not just some sort of a mathematical uh, thing that's not any different from math, or there has to be more to it than just you know scholarly interest. Absolutely, I think that's really important, and I think sometimes that has been lost upon some people. I mean, I know there was like a famous uh, article like in the New York Times or something by Milton Babbitt. Do you know what I'm
Oh,
talking about?
no, I
Like
can
I think it was from like
imagine.
the 1960s or something, and apparently he didn't come up with this title, but I guess the editor came up with the title, and the title was now I'm blanking on it. Um, who cares if you like it, or something like that. It's or it basically the article was arguing that just like in any of the sciences where there might only be a handful of experts who might actually understand, I don't know, whatever it is. I don't know enough about it, but like in physics, whatever is sort of the theory, string theory, or something like that. Or there might only be just a very small number of people in the whole planet who can actually really understand. He was, I think, making the argument in this essay that music should be the same thing. It should be just like there should just be a few experts who are really, really knowledgeable who can actually understand this stuff. And I don't. I just completely disagree with that. So, so that's why I think that it really is important that whatever you come up with as a method, there is some sort of a human truth to it that comes through. So,
I mean, John Deacon and I were talking about this in the previous interview, and this idea of music needing to be the primary text, right? Rather than, oh, well, you can't understand this piece unless you read this article. At the same time, right, experience has a lot to do with it. And I mean, for me, I listen to
sure.
Bartok and even, something like Schoenberg String Trio, which, I mean, that piece in particular, it took some work to get into the ear for me.
Yeah.
The first probably 10 times I listened to it, it kind of sounded like someone gave, a monkey a crayon and some manuscript paper or something. But then actually when I played it, I realized it's this stunning piece of music, and
Yeah.
it's got the story behind it and everything, but I can see people who don't have the interest or the patience, right, to listen to it 10 times or can't play it because they're not a violist or whatever. They just hear it and they're just, they stop after, one time or two times, and they're just like, what is this? Why am I listening to this when I could be listening to Brahms or Beethoven or Schumann or something? There's kind of and even Bartok, the quartets, which are so, dear to my heart and your heart, and they really don't sound strange to me at all. There are weird parts of it, but there are weird things in Beethoven also.
Sure.
But I get it. I can still hear those pieces with the ears that I had when I was 15 or 16 years old, hearing them the first time, and they were like, wait, what is this? What is this stuff? Now it just sounds. I mean, it's just, Beethoven, Brahms, Schumann, Bartok. It's just like, this isn't strange at all.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I mean, and I mean, I find that I rarely play something that I can't really enjoy playing. Um, uh, but also there's I think there's a little bit of a danger to that, which is that like, what if a bunch of monkeys did create a piece of music somehow, and then it was put in front of me, and I worked on it for a year or something. Would I? But I wasn't told it was a bunch of monkeys. Like I thought, how would I think? Would I be like, this is actually really quite brilliant? Like, I don't know. I think that's sort of, that's the one extreme, and then the other extreme is what, like Philip Glass or something. I'm not sure what it would be. And then, Schoenberg Trio is wherever it would be on that spectrum. I mean, the question is, like, at what point on that spectrum does it start becoming like Milton Babbitt's essay, like, who cares if you listen?
Right.
And is there a point that's too much or not? And I guess I think there is a point where it's too much, and I'm not sure where it is. I think Schoenberg Trio is still on the good side of that line, although I'm sure people would disagree with me. But I think it's an important thing for musicians to think about, because I think it is easy for us to become to really, really enjoy playing really thorny, challenging music, because it's such it's a really gratifying feeling to take this thing that's completely unintelligible at first, and make sense out of it, um, and then try to sort of convey what you figured out to others. It's really really fulfilling. Um,
Sure.
but but I mean the other, but it's still. Uh, then it becomes very difficult once you reach that point to then step out of that and go to the other side and be an audience member who hasn't spent all that time with it, and to see it from their perspective as well. It's I don't know. I've struggled with it over the years because I've gone through different phases in my uh, I guess in terms of like what music I've championed. Um, uh, like for a while I was like really into Carter, um,
Hmm.
and I mean the cello sonata is like I still think the cello sonata is amazing.
So
Uh,
Elliot Carter, for anyone who might not know who's watching this, just saying.
so,
Yeah.
yeah. So and now I sort of think, well, the cello sonata I still think is great, but I think some of his later stuff, um, it's I don't know if it's good to have that stuff sort of as being like this is American music now, like, or not now, but like in the 21st century,
Hmm.
uh, as like this is what we're saying is like this represents us. Um, I don't know. I'm not sure that that's necessarily good for new music,
Sure.
because it's not very accessible to an audience.
Yeah, I mean, the argument can be made. You're talking about, what music you've championed in the past. Beethoven and Mozart, they don't need champions, right? But
Yeah,
but Carter does even, I mean, I find even Bartok and Berg need champions. Um,
sure.
one of the most gratifying comments I've ever heard was last summer. Was it last summer we did Lyric Suite? It's last summer, right?
Yes, it was.
Yes,
It
that's right.
was.
And a very old, very dear friend of mine came to the concert and heard Lyric Suite, and he said, I thought I was gonna hate that piece, and it was going to be just another piece of music that musicians play for themselves. But he was like, I really enjoyed it, and it's just like, yes.
That's great. That's
And
great.
it's this Berg can't get more second Viennese school than Lyric Suite, and it's
Sure.
gnarly and it's hard uh, and it's certainly not the first piece I would reach for if I'm looking for accessible music, but
Right.
but he liked it, and we got a lot of really positive feedback from last summer
Yeah.
on that work in
That's great.
particular. So
Yeah. That's fantastic because that's yeah, it's definitely, I mean, I remember hearing it for the first time and I wasn't sure what to make of it, you know.
right.
Yeah.
How old were you?
Uh, it, I have to confess, I don't think it was that long ago.
Sure. Well, okay. So
I was
where
like,
your own music, where on that graph would you put your music? In fact,
I mean, it depends on the piece, and it depends on the piece. I mean, um, some pieces, I guess I might try for, my goals are different. Sometimes I'm trying to, entertain. Other times I'm trying to see where a particular idea might take me. Um, but always, 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 my number one priority is do not bore the audience.
hmm,
That's my number one priority. Is um, whatever I do, if you bore the audience, you're harming art. I mean, you may as well just take a a bludgeon uh, you know um, to Michelangelo's one of his famous sculptures. I mean, that's what you're doing when you're boring an audience.
hmm.
So um, that's for me. That's the rule I live by, with both performing and with composing. So
Sure, but I mean, even the concept of, one person's uh, mystical, hypnotic music might be another person's boring. I mean, you mentioned Philip Glass, and I mean, I remember seeing Koyaanisqatsi, right, in a theater, and right, these images, this rocket ship kind of turning over and blowing up, and then blowing up again, and blowing up again and again, and the music is, going over, and you're Koyaanisqatsi, and it's an experience, um, but and a kind of immersive experience in that way, and you kind of go into this beta state. But
Yeah.
recently a friend invited me to the Met to see. I can't remember what it was. It's a Philip Glass opera, and I just had to say that and this is, I don't know, maybe this is horribly ignorant, but it's kind of like, I don't know, life life is too short. I don't think I want to sit through 3 hours of of something like that.
Sure.
But maybe it would have been completely transporting experience.
Yeah, and that's a really good argument. Is one person's boring could be another person's most captivating experience of their lifetime. So, yeah, I mean that's a good argument. I would still say though, if one person is bored in the audience, then I haven't done my job.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, but and it's impossible to form an opinion of any art without experiencing it. So I can't really say anything about the Philip Glass opera.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, I know it's an ideal that's impossible to actually achieve. I mean, someone's always going to be bored. And I played a concert. I My friend from high school came to my concert the night before. He had gone to a Fish concert. The rock band
Sure.
Fish.
That's from like the what? They've been around a while, actually, right?
Yeah, they've been around a while. This story is from like 15 years ago, probably.
Okay.
And so I played this concert. What was it? It was. I feel like it was Beethoven. It was like a Beethoven piano trio, and there was other stuff on the program. And he sat in the audience. He's not a musician. He's just my friend from high school. And afterwards, uh, he was like, oh, I enjoyed the such and such. I fell asleep in the Beethoven, but and it was just kind of funny that like he was just telling me this like it was not a big deal.
Right.
Whereas for the Fish concert, he was just like over the moon, raving about it. But that made an impression on me. It was just like, okay, well, first of all, maybe he didn't get any sleep the night before because he was at the Fish concert. But still, I don't know. It made an impression on me. Like, okay, I didn't somehow bring him in as well as I could have.
Hmm. Well, I've got this problem when almost inevitably most concerts I go to, whatever, 8 o'clock, the lights go down, and it's almost, it doesn't matter what they're playing. Just a lot of times for the first half of a concert, it's just you know literally lights out for me. You're tired, and then you wake up, and then you're fresh. I probably shouldn't say that. It's like, yeah,
Oh no, no,
best
I
concerts
I
I've
under
slept through. So
I have to admit, the most, it's so shameful actually. I'm embarrassed to even say this. The one time I ever heard, my idol, or one of my idols, Rostropovich.
okay.
I was in it was in Avion in France, and it was the Beethoven Archduke trio on the first half, and then Shostakovich piano trio, the long one, in the second half. And during the Archduke, I could not stay awake. Um, I just kept nodding off, and the whole time I kept thinking, I'm seeing Rostropovich for like the one time in my life, and I can't stay awake for it. I felt, but then I thought, well, but it's really very boring. And then in the Shostakovich on the second half, it was like unbelievable. Like I was riveted. It was amazing the difference. So, but still, I just, well, so yeah, falling asleep can happen. I guess there can be a lot of reasons for it. Just,
All right. Well, the pressure's on. So, what link of your own composition should I link to in this, below when this post goes out? What is representative? It's interesting because you talk about different kinds of music. I think of Graham Greene, the author, right? And
yeah.
he would write. He had two kinds of books he would write. He would write his novels. I suppose be called what, art fiction or whatever. But he had another kind of book which he was very open about. He called entertainments. So
Mm.
a novel like The Heart of the Matter, and entertainments, travels with my aunt, or some of the spy kind of genre fiction.
Hmm.
And they're all wonderful. They're all terrific, and they're all very much his
Hmm.
voice. But they had
Hmm.
in his mind, they had different functions in a way.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
but yeah, going back to your own music. So what piece is on YouTube that I can link to, that I should link to?
I mean, I guess this cello duet, Palindroma Canon, uh, yeah, which well, I'm in the process of creating a new video of the performance that has a certain kind of animation that demonstrates the palindrome canon aspect of it, but I haven't posted that yet. I might get around to it.
Hmm.
Um, but that, I mean, it was written. I mean, there's other stuff, but I think that would be one. I mean, I also, I one of the things I did over the beginning of the pandemic, when I was I was stranded in Australia at the beginning of the pandemic. I actually went back to that first eight cello piece that I wrote when I was a freshman in college, and I multi-tracked it again. So that would sort of show sort of my early, like, sort of when I was more sort of like Dvorak-y. But I don't know. There's every piece I feel like it's hard for me to sort of pick a favorite. Um,
That's great.
yeah, I don't know. And then also just sort of, I think there's sort of the my solo cello composing, and then my composing. Um, I don't know if it's like Graham Greene. But my solo cello stuff is just, it's much more geared towards cello playing and virtuosity, uh, and it's maybe uh, because I'm able to just try things out, and there can be a lot more trial and error involved, where I get immediate trial and error, so I can tweak it very quickly. So my compositional process with solo cello is very different from when I'm writing a piece, and I can write it much faster, and it's just a different kind of a thing. So in terms of solo cello stuff, I mean, there is my pop on popped stuff, that is probably my most experimental, in terms of cello technique. In terms of composing, there's not a lot that has links that's on YouTube, but probably the pizzicato piece would be the one, which is all pizzic. It's a 3-minute pizzicato piece that I wrote quite a few years ago now. Uh, but
You
yeah,
talked
I would
about the
definitely.
pop unpopped. So that what was it? Downtown Funk that you wrote. So what is
Uh,
pop unpopped? What does that
I
mean?
can see. I can see you're not well versed in this medium. Uptown funk, not downtown funk.
Oh, geez. Okay.
No, it's
Yeah.
okay.
Guilty as charged. Yeah.
Yeah. Uptown funk is one of the more popular of them. But yeah, it was a project I did where I took um, pop songs basically and turned them into solo cello pieces, um, and it was. Uh, basically I wanted a project that would give me certain constraints, because I think that the more, if you don't give yourself any constraints, it's very difficult to write something and to be creative. If you start sort of giving yourself restraints, um, like for instance, with this project, it had to be the number one song on the first of every month, regardless of what the song was, regardless of whether I liked it. Um, so, on the first of the month, I would check the Billboard chart, whatever it was. That was the song I had to come up with a solo cello piece for that month.
Wow.
Um, so it
How long did you
really
sustain this?
about 16 months. Every once in a while, when I had a really busy month, I would take a month off. Um, uh, but uh, um, but having those constraints made it so that it just forced me to be creative in a way that just I I did things I never in a million years would have thought that I would have done. Things like fingering with my right hand and stuff like that I never would have imagined. Um, so uh, it ended up being it ended up being I would even say surpassing sort of what I was hoping for when I had the idea for the project, because I thought that it might take me in some interesting directions, but I didn't think it would be quite that interesting.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, I don't know. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
So what do you listen to around the house when you and Angel are walking around, or you're cooking dinner, or you're folding your laundry? What kind of music are you listening to?
Well,
Or what are you
when
listening to
Angel
now? Maybe I'll say.
when Angel and I are both in the house, we're not really listening to sort of necessarily the stuff that I would be listening to if I was by myself. She's definitely broadened my horizons. Um,
Well, she's classically trained. She's a harpist who went to Curtis, right?
Yeah, 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 exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But like, I mean, I like some sort of grungier, hard rock.
Ah,
Um, Not exactly heavy metal, but sort of. Because when I was in high school, which is, I feel as though a lot of people, most people, probably kind of get stamped at around the age of like 15, 16, 17 as like that's the time they're from,
uh-huh.
and
Sure.
it sticks with them for their whole lives. Maybe I'm not sure. And so for me, I was that age, in the early '90s, and I was sort of stamped by what was popular then, which was Nirvana, uh, Pearl Jam, Stone Temple Pilots, uh, these sort of alternative rock of that time. And my favorite was probably Soundgarden, which I'm sure no one really knows about. But
So
and
wait,
then
is it
later,
called grunge, or am I?
yeah, yeah, Soundgarden is absolutely grunge, I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Give me a
alternative
favorite
kind of.
song. I'll put a link. I'll put a link to that below also. What's a favorite Soundgarden
Um,
song?
Geez.
So people can be like, oh, this is what Clancy, this is what he really likes.
I mean,
Forget
I
this
mean,
other stuff.
my favorite one of the songs is not necessarily like going to be a lot of people's, but I really like this song called "Pretty Noose," um, which is, well, it's a disturbing song, especially in light of later events. But it has this quintuplet in it that is like the most perfect quintuplet ever in history. It's like I don't know how to explain it, but it's a quintuplet that is just like it's like chiseled out of rocks, and it's just like it's an amazing quintuplet. If you listen, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's
I will
I think it might
definitely
be.
be listening to this. Oh, so how does it work? I mean, you talked about the. It's funny, we're talking to you basically as a composer, right? Um, but um, you talked about the cello octet that you wrote, and then how it got kind of massacred by this, some student performance. Um, but I mean, I found this in my own compositions, right? You talk about notating more, um, but there's this line between notating enough, but then too much because you want to trust the artist and give them an opportunity to do something interesting, maybe which you don't anticipate. So I mean,
Mhm.
how do you feel about your music performed not by students but by other, by colleagues, for instance? How do you feel about that?
I mean, I love it. I love it, and I've definitely changed in that regard. Um, Not that I didn't love it when I was younger, but um, I used to sort of be of the belief that there was like this thing called the composer's intention,
Hmm.
and um, and that it was this kind of ideal that existed, and that you know, for example, the Moonlight Sonata, Beethoven had in mind a very specific tempo for it, or a very specific way that it should be played, and that's the way it has to be played. Or Bach, the Goldberg Variations theme, or that there's this magical kind of tempo that exists, or it doesn't have to be a tempo, but it often is, that is the composer's intention. Um, and and now I think it's more nuanced than that. I mean, there may very well be such a such a thing in some sort of a way. I mean, I'm sure that if Beethoven played the Moonlight Sonata, he would have played it at a tempo, and maybe he would, if he heard someone else play it, he would have said that's too slow or that's too fast. It's possible, but it's also possible that when he was younger, he would have played it one way, and then when he was older, he would have thought a completely different way. And that's what I've discovered is that my approach to my own pieces has become less rigid, where uh, you know stuff that I wrote a while ago, it's like, oh, it has to be this tempo, it has to be this way, it has to be played on the D string here. Uh, uh, um, Now I sort of feel as though it can often be really really rewarding to see, like, especially if it's another cellist, because then it's so close to me to see another cellist playing something differently than how I would play it, but still in a really compelling way. I mean, that's like such an amazing thing to experience, to see, like, wow, it hadn't occurred to me to do a slide there like that, or to try to do this kind of a fingering, or play it on this string, or something like that. And yeah, so now I think I've loosened up, and I think I'm a little more willing to just sort of uh, let the performer just do what is best. Um, I say that, but I'm still pretty particular. But yeah,
I mean, it's difficult as a composer, right? Because you write these things and then, then they're like your children, but you also have to, you got to let them go, and it's out in the world, and people will perform it in, I mean, I'm not the first person to say this, right? But in a weird sort of way, once it's out there, it's kind of like not, it's not really yours anymore in a sense.
yeah,
But then you have people like Mahler who kept on changing constantly. He'd write, some symphony or whatever, and there's the revision, and then another revision, and then another revision, and then you're kind of like, well, I like the first one, but I like the third one also, and where do you go with that? I think
yeah.
even the Schoenberg, we're playing Schoenberg's second string quartet this summer. I think we're playing he revised it, right? We're playing the revised version.
Oh,
Um,
okay. I actually,
I
I
think
I
so.
either didn't know that or I forgot. That's interesting. Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, when I was younger, I used to sort of think, okay, I'm writing it, and now it's like perfect. It's like it's done. It's this final. There it is. Now I'm much more into revising things. Much more. Because yeah, I mean, like look at Mendelssohn Octet or something like that. Like, um, I mean, supposedly, what we think of as Mendelssohn's Octet that he wrote. How old was he when he wrote it? Like,
16,
uh,
I think, something.
16, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we say, but what we play is like something he revised. I don't know how old, maybe he was like 18 or something when he revised it. I don't know. But what we know as the Mendelssohn Octet is the revised thing, and it's this masterpiece. And I'm glad he revised it.
It's perfect.
So it's just, yeah, it's
It's a
about as
perfect
close to
piece of
perfect
music.
as
Yeah,
you can get. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um, and so if you think you can improve upon it, then why not? I think, so that
Right.
your piece is will be the later version rather than the earlier version.
Yeah.
um, I mean, there's a famous, Brahms B major piano trio was sort of a famous. I mean, it doesn't have viola in it, so but
Yeah, so I wouldn't know it.
but it's like it's one of these rare examples where he wrote it when he was, oh, maybe in his 30s or something like that, and it was really quite popular, and like I think it might have been the first piece by Brahms that was played in the United States.
Oh,
um,
huh.
and but then when he was older, like at the end of his life, he completely revised it. Like it's like really different.
Oh,
um,
I had no idea. So what's the version
yeah,
that's played then usually?
and everyone pretty much plays the later version. But the earlier version he wanted to keep in print, and he really made a point of like, I want it kept in print. And Clara Schumann, she said that she liked the earlier version better, um, but the later version, to me and to pretty much everyone, is just so superior to the earlier version. Um, and it just sort of made me think about it, like why did he write that revise why did he want to revise it at the end of his career? Like, and I feel like he must have seen that there was just so much potential, because the melodies, it's such an amazing work,
Hmm.
but he must have realized that like it didn't reach its potential. And that feeling, I think, as an artist, that like that your work didn't reach its potential, like it had so much potential and it didn't reach it. I think it must have been eating away at him for his whole life, and finally he wanted to just put that to rest, and make it into the. I mean, now, I mean, perfect. I would use it for Mendelssohn, maybe not for Brahms, but maybe it's better than Mendelssohn too.
Hmm.
It's just it's one of my favorite pieces, the B major piano trio. Anyway, so revising it's an interesting thing, and I think it's good to revise.
Well, let me ask you then, how do you know when you're composing a piece? How do you know when it's done then? I
I
mean, I
mean,
imagine authors must grapple with this all the time. Painters, right?
yeah, I think I mean, it's I guess, there's the question of sort of structurally whether you add something big or take something out, or whether you're just sort of adding in a little bit of shading and color. And um, I mean, it's two different kinds of sort of being complete, I guess. Um, and like I said, when I was younger, I used to think, okay, it's finished. I would even think, okay, it's this is how it should be. It's just there's
Hmm.
not a single note needs to be changed. But I was wrong. I can say, with some certainty, I was wrong. It could have been improved. Um, so now I think it's I don't want to say it's never complete, because I think there are a few pieces I've written where uh, it would be a mistake to change it. But but I do think that there's nothing wrong with tweaking it a little bit here, a little bit there.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we should probably wrap things up pretty soon, but let me just ask you, I know you're a fan of Schoenberg's Second Quartet, which we're playing this
Yeah.
summer. So I don't know, what are your thoughts on that piece?
I mean, it's we were talking about sort of the spectrum of like, you know a bunch of monkeys, like sort of just like throwing ink on a manuscript paper versus Philip Glass or something like that. And the Schoenberg too is definitely definitely, I think, uh, more towards the I don't want to say Philip Glass, but more towards the accessible side, than what a lot of people might think of when they think of Schoenberg, or of the Second Viennese School. um, it's it's got so much beauty to it, and it's sort of right on the edge, I guess, of like, he you hear a lot of like the tonal elements of the Clair Connacht or something like that, but you can also hear how he's starting to head in a sort of the crazy direction of the trio or whatever. Um, and I think it's kind of exciting to sort of see that it's like right on that precipice kind of where you see both of those kind of intertwining, and and then with the soprano, and it's so I just remember the first time I played, I think the first time for some reason I just played the movement uh, with the soprano. All I remember is I remember playing it and just thinking, this is just so exquisite. It's just like I just remember just sort of marveling over the craft and the beauty of it. Um, uh, and then it's so interesting how, like, at the end of the piece, if I remember correctly, it's been like a long time since I played it, but I seem to remember it's like it doesn't it have like the quote of that, I don't know what that tune is, the folk tune. You know what I'm
Oh,
talking about?
yeah. Uh,
It's like
yeah, that's in the second movement. Uh,
is it in the second movement?
yeah,
Okay, yeah. Um, where it's like sort of out of the blue. Doesn't Bartok 5 kind of have something like that, like
yeah, at
towards
the
the
end of
end?
Bartok 5, the little hurdy-gurdy melody.
Yeah, where all of a sudden it's like it's been going on and it's kind of thorny, and then all of a sudden there's like a moment where there's like a totally recognizable
Right.
melody, like out of the blue. Um, and and I don't know of any other example like that, like in Schoenberg, where he sort of steps into that world for a second and wears that hat for like just a brief moment. It's
Mhm.
like like I wonder what he was like. I don't know. I don't know what he was. I mean, clearly it's like funny. It's meant to be funny. It's like a joke. But I wonder what meaning it has behind it. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a cool moment because it just sort of puts in perspective. It's sort of like Kandinsky. Like if it's just like it's just a Kandinsky like painting or something, and you can't really find any recognizable image, and then there's like a smiley face, or I don't know, or like a something that's just completely uh, I don't know, just thrown in there that still somehow seems to fit, even though it's like it's kind of, yeah, I don't know, it's
Well, it's one
interesting.
of those moments in a concert, you're hearing it, and then, you do a double take. You're like, wait, what? What
Yeah,
is that doing there? But and then it's gone, right? And you're
and then
like,
it's gone. Yeah,
it's like, wait, what was that? But of course, it also fits perfectly.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
so it's a very strange piece, but also as you said, it's an exquisite piece of music. So it's
yeah,
going to be.
yeah.
I've never done it before, so
Oh,
I'm looking forward to this. I think I might be the only one
yeah.
in the group who hasn't played it. So
It could, yeah, because I know I remember Becky said she played it before, I
Becky's
think
done it.
so.
Maya just did it, I believe. So
Oh, wow. Oh,
yeah.
okay. So, oh, geez.
So,
Okay, so I gotta prepare that. Okay.
so I'm sure Susan's done it. So all right, Clancy, it's been great to talk to you. Really great to talk to you. And
Yeah, this is a
you
fun
know,
topic.
I'll 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 see you around. If I don't see you before Australia, have a great trip.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to being back this summer at Newburyport.
All right. See you later.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.